Hi, my name's Noah, and this is a video for Wolf. In this video, I wanted to talk to you about crises. Crises are situations that lead to a great deal of distress. And what constitutes a crisis is self-defined. Because what might be a crisis for me might not be a crisis for you. A perfect example is a normal argument that can take place in a relationship. This can be an argument about, do we want to have kids? How do we raise our children? How do we spend our finances? It can be quite serious things, or it can be relatively minor, like, what do I want to eat for dinner? And what do you want? And that can lead to disagreement. For some people, though, that simple disagreement can lead to a crisis. They start getting panicked and worried. It creates a great deal of anxiety or uncertainty. That same situation can carry through into a serious argument around things like finances or maybe the splitting of the relationship. But to some people, those sorts of things, they're not really big stressors. And to other people, the small things in an argument or a relationship can be a massive stressor. So it's important to keep in mind that a crisis really is self-defined. And resolving that crisis usually requires some additional support, or certainly it can help to have that support. Now, something that I think is really interesting about a crisis situation is you can't have a hero without a crisis. And often we are looking for other people to be our heroes, to kind of come in our time of need and rescue us. But something I'd like to have you kind of pause and think about a little bit is the nature and role of you being a hero in a crisis, whether it's your own crisis or you witness another person in crisis. Now, there are some tools and resources that can kind of help you in these scenarios. In our community, for example, we have a training available called Mental Health First Aid. And this training teaches you signs and symptoms of different psychiatric conditions or behavioral health conditions and gives you some strategies in how to support somebody and help them through a crisis when they're displaying some symptoms of having a mental health condition. But this training can really help us in other sorts of scenarios and situations, like when we're talking to friends or family members or coworkers, because it gives us some strategies and some skills to employ in helping those individuals to resolve their crises. Or if we take those same skills and we look inwardly, we can apply them in our own lives. Now, something that's phenomenally interesting to me about a crisis is we usually want to avoid them. But crises are fairly unique in that we can't really have heroes without a crisis. And we can be the heroes or other people can be the heroes. It really just has to do with, are we willing to show up? And are we willing to stretch ourselves outside of our comfort zone or perhaps even our personal safety in order to lend a hand to somebody else? So this can be, caused by floods or earthquakes, car accidents, or other major catastrophes. Or again, like in the previous examples, these can be just small problems relative to others. It can be an argument in a relationship, or it can be a pretty big crisis that isn't a disaster, like the breakup of a relationship and how we sort of respond in that regard. And to be a hero in the midst of a crisis, sometimes and often, it really just requires us to stop and listen to the person who's in that situation, even if that person is us. It's an opportunity for us to stop and listen to ourselves and try and see what are our needs in this situation and what really is the driver behind the crisis. And is it something we have power to control or not? Now, one of the things that I like to talk about a lot when it comes to situations like crises, grief, and trauma is hope. And there's this ancient Greek myth that's about Pandora and Pandora's box, which most people know as this box that Zeus took these different experiences and locked them in this box or jar. And Pandora came across this gift from Zeus that was really meant to keep these experiences trapped. But Pandora's curiosity got the better of her, and she opened it, and out came pestilence and famine and war and all kinds of bad things. But when she placed the lid back, there was one thing that was left in the box, which is hope. Now, some people interpret this in a very interesting way, and that's to say that out in the world we have chaos, and hope is sort of trapped away from humanity. But when I read through some of the writings around Pandora's box, it really makes me think in a whole different way. That these negative experiences, these things that can lead to crises, like plague and famine and war, they're out in the world. There's not really much that we can do about them. But what we do still have is Pandora's box, which stays with humanity. And what's inside of Pandora's box still is hope, which means hope remains with humanity, despite the fact that all of these other negative experiences are out in the world. And we have the power within us to tap into that hope, to share it with others, and to be a beacon of light, to be a beacon of hope. And through hope, through the installation of hope, we can help others through their personal times of crises. We can be a hero simply by sharing hope. So one of the things I'd like to challenge you is, as you go about your daily life, look for opportunities to find people who are struggling, who are having a little bit of a difficult time, somebody who needs hope. And I challenge you to step forward, to open Pandora's box just enough to allow that other person a little glimpse of hope that they can take with them and grow and share and experience with others. Because ultimately, although we can't remove the crisis itself most often, we can give people hope, and hope can help them get through the crises. The other thing we can do in listening to people is we can connect them to resources that can also help them. The full burden of this crisis and the resolution and the heroic act, it doesn't fall on our shoulders. We need to be able to come together as a community, to turn to others, to give them that help and support that can help not only end the crises, but resolve it in a very positive way, so that the person who's gone through this experience comes out better in the end, despite the experienced trauma or tragedy or the loss of whatever it is in their lives. So this is an opportunity for you to step forward, to kind of put on your own cape, and maybe your cape has a big H on the back for hope, but you step forward in this time where you don't see others stepping forward, you lend an ear, you listen to the needs, and you connect people to the resources that they need. A resource like a mental or behavioral health professional, a licensed therapist or clinician, perhaps a psychologist or a psychiatrist. You listen for their needs around spirituality. Are they a person of faith or not? And if they are, what is their faith belief system? And do they have supports there? Is there a leader in their faith that you might be able to connect them with so they can get some additional help and support? Another aspect that I'm a big fan of is looking at physical exercise and nutrition, because there's a lot of science and information that really substantiates the gut-to-brain connection. And if we're not eating right, our brains and our bodies can't be functioning right. And if we're not getting some level of exercise and physical activity, it can be a real challenge to help regulate our moods and our emotions. Because ultimately, the way that our body produces serotonin or endorphins, it all also is connected to what we're eating and how our physical body's functioning. So I really suggest that people take a look at that as well. Another aspect that they need to take a glance at is their connectedness into their community, whether it's a small social group or really the community at large. Are they a member of a service club, a faith-based organization, a social group? And if they're not, how can they be? Because ultimately, they'll get a lot of support from this community, but they'll also get a great deal of connectedness through their actions in getting involved, in helping to support others. And it can help stave off some experiences of depression or help them resolve a little bit more promptly through not only the positive change that they're making, but also through being around caring and compassionate others that can step forward and help them. And finally, you have to leave room in your life to be able to make decisions. Decisions about large things or small things, decisions about your daily activities, and hopefully ones that give you a sense of fulfillment. Some of that can be connected into the community service, as an example. So not only are you getting your social connectedness, but you're giving back and you're making decisions about how you want to give back and how you spend your time, your energy, and ultimately where your support goes. So these are just a couple of the ways that when we approach a crisis situation, we can be a hero, we can give hope, and we can look to rebalance ourselves and to grow in the end. So hopefully this message connects with those of you at Wolf who you might be struggling, you might be going through something, or you might see someone else who needs your help and support. Go ahead, step up, share some hope, and be a hero. Thank you.